Can you hear me?
I hear you now.
Okay.
Can you hear
I don't
me?
know. Yeah, I can hear you.
All
Uh,
right.
First thing, let me apologize to the chat. Ron and I probably were a little. We probably should have thought it was going to take a little longer. to, and I'll get to like what I mean there. But basically, let me start over here. Okay. My devices are like frozen up or something. It's really been a problem. Okay. Come on. All right. Happy holidays, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us there. I want to welcome Ron. Ron is from entrecourier.com. So, Ron, it's nice to see you after such a long time.
Good to see you too. Been
Uh,
ages.
yeah. If you are unfamiliar with Ron, you guys, he has a great audio podcast and he has a great website and on that website he puts a lot of really good articles that are easy for you guys to digest. You'll understand all of them and they all make sense. And he definitely is somebody that I go to a lot because I like that Ron does the research. He doesn't guess. And if he completely guesses, he says he does. But I like that he deep dives things and does the research. So check out entrecourier.com, you guys. It's in the show notes and check out what Ron does because it's great stuff. So before we jump in, um, Ron and I just met for coffee today. We both live in the Denver market, obviously, and we hadn't met for coffee in a bit, and we, like normal, talked for probably about what 2 hours, a little more
Yeah.
maybe. And then we thought let's get a live stream now because if some of you remember last year that we ended the year by doing I think one of the last live streams I did and absolutely the last audio podcast I did was with Ron kind of about where we were and what we thought was coming up ahead a little bit. Um, so if you have any questions, guys in the chat or anybody here in the chat today, please post them and I'll take a look here in a little bit. So, okay, Ron, you ready?
Let's go.
All right. So last year, you and I were breaking down how there is no way around independent contractorship for the gig apps. I mean, they were there, you just can't. And that still holds true. And for most drivers, workers in this space, we want to keep this status. And you and I included in that group. In fact, we talked about that today. If there wasn't, even if it's a change in some form of gig app uh, independent contractorship, and we can get into that a little bit, but it would need to be because if it goes to a full employee model, I've said this before, but I really want to hit home to this. I would have no part of it. I mean, this is not. I'm not looking to do a W-2 work for Uber, DoorDash, Insta, any of them. And I also need to say that I also wouldn't trust my job stability very much even in a W 2. These are not companies I trust. I know all big companies can get a little weird, but I don't think they're going to keep stopping the good fight to stay independent. It's just that a lot of things Ron and I hit on today were that along that way of keeping up the good fight, when they're given these little windows of opportunity to like maybe better themselves a little in image or in their market or even the space and do the right thing. I feel like, and Ron and I were talking about this, how they still will cross the line. Have a line drawn that even seems acceptable, and and I'm talking about the same day. They're like, well, then boom, and they go. So, Ron, with all that's going on, thoughts 2022, 2023?
Yeah, I know. A big part of this last couple of months has been Department of Labor coming out with their new proposed rule, and going through the comment period and all of the things that the way that they're going to define whether or not somebody is an independent contractor or not. Basically, they're trying to write a law without going through Congress. But the one thing about that is a lot of people are saying, well, how can you work with these companies when you can't trust them? Shouldn't we force them to use employees so that there's a little more accountability with that? Because with employment, there are more laws that they have to follow as far as how they treat their workers. And I get that. I understand that. And I think, like you were just saying, Steve, there are so many things that they do to try and get away with stuff that they cross the line. And I don't trust these companies one bit. There's, especially the major ones, especially. But making them my employer is not the answer,
No,
because
it's actually the polar opposite of the answer.
it is absolutely is, because the thing is I can't trust them, but I look at them as these guys are my customers. DoorDash and Uber Eats, they're the ones that I see as my customers, because they're the ones that send me the money, and customers are going to try and screw you. That's just the nature of the beast when you're running a business. And so that's one thing. And they definitely try and do that, but at least I've got some control over the situation, and I've got the ability to say, no, you can't do that. If you make them my employer, everything's changed now. All of a sudden, this company that I can't trust, they're not going to become model citizens. They're not going to become all of a sudden these great companies to work for. This is not going to be, DoorDash is never going to be, top 500 places to work for, because
No.
they're shady, they're unethical, they're DoorDash. And
Yeah.
so,
I would doubt.
there's no way I trust
I
them
would
with
even
us.
go as far as to say none of the giants will ever.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's not a single one of them that I would trust as my employer. There's no way I would give them that kind of power over me. And just like you said, if it ever came to that, I'm done with delivery, because
Yeah.
there's no way that I am going to let one of them be my employer. There's no way I'm going to let them tell me what to do. They can offer things to me and I can accept or decline, and I decline a heck of a lot more than I accept, but there's no way I'm going to work for them.
Right.
So,
And I think it goes a little bit to, like, as we were discussing today. I mean, like, understand, guys, that Ron and I have some, like, really, when we're not on the air, when we're just talking, things are flying really quick. But there was a point when we're like, I mean, both of us kind of, I think we're in that same moment of, wait, are we employees? And both of us hardcore agree we are not. However, I go back to this line in the sand thing. When I say that, I don't mean like it's equal ground for both sides. And here's the line in the sand. I mean it like these gig companies get a huge win, and the line gets put in their advantage in the sand, and then they're still like, nope, and they just almost immediately overstep a new transparency or non-transparency issue, make a new game on the app that people can challenge are you awake enough? Are these games actually hurting, making chances for more accidents? There's all these studies have gone on forever, but it's like complete transparency. And then, but has it gone so far now that, I mean, you guys, like, part of the reason we're doing this isn't just because we did one last year. Also, this proposal is a big deal that's going on right now, a very big deal, and it plays into this. And this also will apply to, obviously, traditional ICs too. But I like the way you said it earlier, Ron. If you want to try and give it a tackle for the proposal, because I kind of put it more in just a federal had, it had some, it obviously can be a pave the way type thing, but I saw it more as just the one major control they had was federal minimum wage. But
mm,
you kind of hit on some other points that I think we need to address.
yeah. And, that's part of the problem, is that there are so many different definitions of who's an employee. The federal government has a number of different definitions, and each department that handles something to do with employment has its own definition. IRS has a different definition than the Department of Labor. and each state has their own definition, and each entity has um, their own piece of the pie that they watch over. So, you know, big deal has been in California with AB5, and that determines whether or not you're an employee in California. But it only determines as far as whether the state sees you as an employee, and or whether the state sees you as an independent contractor. And that has to do with state unemployment and or state unemployment insurance, workers' comp, things like that. So it's things that the state operates. IRS, of course, has to do with um, whether you're subject to self-employment tax or regular employment tax. Does your employer have to pay half of your taxes for you or not? Things like that. And then the Department of Labor is over the Fair Labor Standards Act, which handles things like minimum wage, overtime regulations, family medical leave, certain discrimination laws, things like that. And so, and that's where this rule is with the Department of Labor. And so the funny thing is California passed Prop 22, or the citizens of California did. And according to California law right now, independent contractors for app-based programs like Uber and DoorDash are actually independent contractors by law right now. That depends on appeals to that law, because right now it has been ruled unconstitutional, but they're appealing it and everything. So it all kind of depends on what happens with that. But the thing is California can call you an independent contractor, but the federal government can call you an employee. And each can stand up. Neither one of them causes the other to be wrong or right, and their things,
Right.
but it all has to do with what things that they're overseeing. And so that's kind of the weird thing, is every state has different things. California uses an ABC test where there are 3 tests, and you have to pass all 3 of them to be able to be an independent contractor. This new law with the Department of Labor has 6 different tests, and basically it's subjective. They look at each of those and they weigh them all together. And it's almost like each one is a vote. But
I was just going to say, I don't even know if we talked about this today, but I feel like even after talking to Kim and what I read, Kim Cavan, I feel like it's like going to be like on a case by case basis. Like, I know this can't happen, but I almost like foresee like a room, like just like enter, exit, and a guy behind a desk. It's like,
yeah, yeah,
you're good.
and essentially what's going to happen is they'll if they think that a company is dodging the laws, then they'll sit down and they'll take a look at each one of these 6 different things and say, okay, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And then at that point, they have to decide. Then they have to decide, are the things in favor of independent contractor status greater than employment status and things like that? And then that determines whether or not they're required to pay minimum wage or overtime or things like that.
I think one of the better examples that we talked about today, that kind of really hits home on one specific, we'll have to pick on them because it is what it is, but DoorDash. I mean, we could pick on any of them. It's just, this is what we happened to talk around today a little bit. And DoorDash is straight up breaking the independent contractor status. And we pointed this out in a few ways. I'm going to start with just one. Top Dasher alone breaks the independent contractor rules.
There's a place where you could make that argument,
because offering something to somebody based on performance or whatever, based on whatever you want when it comes to independent contractors, offering it to a select few but not all is not independent contractorship.
Well, and there are a lot of markets where it is really hard to get on the schedule with DoorDash. You know, everything's grayed out almost right away as far as the scheduling. And so a lot of people feel like they have to be top dasher in those markets in order to be able to work when they want to work.
For the Dash Now privilege, yeah.
Yep, because you can dash anytime. And for DoorDash, it is a nice perk. It's really the only true perk of being a top dasher. You don't get better offers. They don't even promise that you do anymore. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that, you know, the primary factor in just about any test, or the one most common factor as to whether or not you can use independent contractors, is whether or not you control the work that the contractor does. And a
Right.
big piece of that is scheduling. Well, if you have to accept 70% of your orders in order to be able to go out and work, that is DoorDash controlling the contractor. And under any test, you know, including the existing ones,
Yeah. And
that's
by that, I
definitely
was
something
even
that
talking about we could even go back in time. We could go to the original IRS test. We could go to the Barilla test. We could go to the ABC. I mean, this is across the board. It's very simple stuff. And you could pick, like, if you're wondering where I was doing some research with Para. We used a couple different documents that I've sourced in the videos that I talked about them, where we got the 10 independent contractor rights that are just kind of general across the country. My challenge is to you guys can go to any law website, wherever you want, that's a legit website, and find the rules of independent contractor. They're the same. They might just be in a different order or whatever, but they're the same in this country, no matter where you find them.
to
Like
some
there's
extent, um,
yeah,
yeah, they weigh them differently, but there are generally, most of them have the same factors. The IRS rules are really all around control. They're all
yeah,
different things that determine whether you control. There are some others that they go into a little more about the nature of the relationship beyond control. So ABC test is if you're doing the same line of work as the company, just by that alone, you should be an employee. And
right.
so, and that doesn't get into the IRS thing, but yeah, it all kind of depends on, you know, who you're talking to and which ones they say are the most important, you know, and, you know, control has been a big one. The Department of Labor has actually tried to, with their rule, de-emphasize control, because that's
Right.
one thing that's usually kind of in favor of gig workers. There are a lot of areas that we do have control over what we do when we go out, different things like that. They want to de-emphasize that and point more to, you know, the nature of the relationship and things like that, and or redefine control to make it look like it is an employee relationship. Unfortunately, it's like they can determine this. One, you can't change. They can't change the law. They don't have the legal authority to change the law. All they can do is write a rule that tells how they interpret who is what for enforcement purposes. And but you know the problem is that they use this new rule, and if it changes the definition, then that leaves them wide open to lawsuits and challenges, which can drag that out. And Uber and DoorDash and all these others have got the war chest to be able to fight that, and they can drag it out, and they'll probably win. The problem is all the other independent contractors that they don't have clients, you know, freelancers that don't have clients that have that big legal fund to be able to fight this.
Yeah, and by the way, this is where we separate some things. So Ron and I also at very length today talked about the traditional independent contractors, and by which I don't even almost don't even want to call them ICs, even though they really are the ones we're undefined in the gig realm. But I mean, I just want to call them self-employed entrepreneurs, pro golfers. um, I find that funny but true. Like you said, freelancers, writers. I mean, we talked about the attack that'll happen on writers, but before we even get into that, I mean, this is some of what DoorDash has going on right now. Is that DoorDash gets challenged, they get sued, and they keep a top dasher model in place. They have hidden tips. You can't see the tips. They have it seems like a decaying lack of transparency, and by that I mean going back to that line stepping thing I was referring to. It's like a dare. It's like once a place is like, okay, fine. It's like they're like, well, that's not enough now, and they're doing things that are so overstepping. And then we have the diamond program. We have the hourly. Ron and I ripped this hourly thing to crap because that is an employee.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
here's what I think. And Ron, I didn't tell you this even when we were having coffee because I just thought of it on the drive home. But honestly, here's what I was thinking about. Remember when I said why even allow the one cancellation? I
Hmm.
feel like that's just their way of saying he has control. He can
Yeah.
decline one.
Absolutely is. Yeah. The whole history of gig economy, starting with the early days of Uber and Lyft and getting into delivery, has been all of these companies trying to walk as close to that line as they can and step over it wherever they can get away with it. And and that's part of the reason we're in the middle of this mess right now. That
Yeah.
I think they've done that so much that there's enough people that are saying, "Hey, this is not right," and they try and push for laws to change that. And honestly, if you ask me, I mean, it's a question of whether they've misclassified their workers. And based on what the company is doing, I think they are misclassifying. I think that they are expecting employees at the independent contractor price. And so
Exactly.
I think that they have abused the independent contractor status.
And I feel
Um,
like for years that went overlooked because I like the way you worded that because there needs to be a win where we become independent contractors because like I was telling you, my the laser company that I've worked for since 97, they're coming back so strong. I mean, things are going to and I'm not necessarily that one thing, but other things are coming back in where I'll keep the gig work absolutely, but I need to keep all of it open to me. And shutting this off
sure.
shuts off a lot. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like the way you said that they're obviously it's easy to understand that they're expecting employees and they want to pay ICs. That part's
Yeah.
easy because there's no taxes. I can tell you from running a business myself, and Ron is probably very familiar with this too, is that this payroll can kill you. Payroll can kill a business. I mean, that alone, just payroll, you could be doing well and payroll can kill your business.
Sure.
So them to be able to get away with that, but at the same time knowing none of us want that, that's the win-win. But
That's
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 why
the
they
thing.
double line cross. Hey
Yep.
Pedro, thank you for that. I appreciate the Merry Christmas super chat. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is like, and especially with the pandemic happening as it did, and people got laid off left and right. And how many people were able to keep food on the table because of being able to go out and do DoorDash or Uber Eats or some of those different things.
Yeah.
And it's that freedom there. The vast majority of gig workers want to stay independent. And
Oh, by
you
by a
know,
long shot. And also,
yeah,
I do this all the time, but let's remember, guys, 15% of the gig economy is 30 to 45 plus hours a week. Uh 85% is 13 hours or less a week. And the 60% is 7 or 8%. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to quote it exact, but 7 or 8% of the gig economy. So you got 85% that I don't want to say it this way, mean, but really in the big picture of the things we're concerned about don't matter because they'll be the type of people that find out this happened after it happened. If any kind of employment push comes, because they'll find out, oh, I can't just work the app anymore. No, that's gone to an employment model because most likely, or they would have to, they have another job or source of income that is their W 2, and this is just something for some extra scrap on the side. So it's only 15% of us really, really, really matter, and I think I need to say that I think they like the fighting for AB5 really didn't have a ton of people. It just were the people that were that mad at the gig companies and other things that were pushing it. But even though it was let's say it was 5,000 people pushing that, at the things only like 20, 15 people would show up at all their events. So it's like it barely looked like anything. If you really like shut the apps down and said, pick a side, you'd find 99% over on the IC side. I think they just did a good job at marketing the people who had it.
Right.
Just a personal opinion, but
no, I agree.
I think that it can still be saved. I think there needs to be, like I was telling you, Ron, I think there needs to be traditional self-employment. Start calling it maybe that too, or something, which encapsulates everything. If you're an entrepreneur, investor, if you're a poker player, because guys, poker players are independent contractors, even if they're sponsored, and pro and amateur is a lot of people in this country. Pro golfers, every pro golfer is an independent contractor. So by these laws, would no longer be able to be in tournaments unless they were a W-2 employee that committed to all the tournaments or something. I don't even know how that would look. But I think there's a way out of this. I just think it needs to be defined, like we were talking about in Europe. Even though Europe has a little issue keeping them on track, they push for that middle worker class so that not everybody has to be straight IC from the 1970s, 80s, but doesn't have to be a W-2. We've got to have a hybrid in place, or at least find a way to move the gig economy back to IC, because otherwise, I don't want to say it because if everybody had a W-2, it's not. But otherwise, isn't that? I just feel like that's a push at like socialism
Sure.
in a harder way. And I'm not trying to be political, but I feel like I can make that statement because I don't want that. I don't want socialism. But
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, it'd be so easy to go down that rabbit hole right now.
I know. And if Ron and I were at coffee, this would be an hour talk, and you guys would never hear it. But
No kidding. Yeah. But and the thing about it is if they if they would just enforce things where they are right now, rather than go out and say we're going to force you to go be employees. How about stop these companies from crossing the line or something like that? Why couldn't they do something that just says, okay, when somebody's deactivated unfairly, that they need to have some due process, or that you can't force drivers to accept certain amount of orders, and step into those type of things rather than make it an employee, either or type of thing. And because I think part of the problem with it is, and this is the whole thing with, we kept talking about how close they walk to the line. Part of the problem is that when you say, okay, we're going to weigh these factors against these factors, and if it's an employee, or if it's more employee, then we call it employee, or if it's more independent contractor, it's independent contractor. But when you do it that way, what happens is DoorDash can say, we're going to do this much, just so long as it doesn't outweigh this side of it. We're going to do as much as we can get away with without crossing the line so far that it pushes that. And so what it does is it gives them license to find areas where they can cross the line.
Yeah. I need to address this. So, Roy, I know this is something you joke about Bush a lot. I'll say from our discussion today, Ron and I we had points about why this is a thing, could be an issue. However, I can straight up 100% answer this for you that we are not employees, because if we were, where's my W-2? And where is the payroll taxes that all these companies owe? So there's no employment model in place. period.
I will argue that one, all day. As far as I think from DoorDash's perspective, we're probably closer to being employees than we think,
Oh,
or that's what they're trying to get.
absolutely. And I think he's
As far as
alluding
how
to, because
DoorDash
I know
does it.
Roy, that he's alluding to control, which I've talked about with Roy on many
Right.
occasions. But
Does DoorDash get, or does
I
Grubhub
mean,
get
like,
taken?
there's no way that we're employees, because if we were, here's another way to look at it. If we were, DoorDash would be out of business.
I think the other side of it is,
They'd be bankrupt with 1.3 million Dashers in the country.
but for
Yeah.
us as individuals, it's about how we approach it. It's about how we do it. Do we look at it as DoorDash is giving me, DoorDash is going to make or break my money? That if I don't make money, it's DoorDash's fault. If I do make money, it's because of DoorDash. Or is it something that we're deciding to take control for ourselves? And that's where I see the real difference, is that if you approach it from I'm running a business mindset, then that's where the difference lies. And so
Yeah.
if you're deciding that, no, DoorDash doesn't tell me what to do, I can take whatever orders I want. And if I don't like what DoorDash has given me, I'm going to another customer who does. And so, so in that regard, yeah, I'm running a business. I am not an employee.
Yes.
But I do understand
this is a comment that I think kind of is what we were trying to get around today. Like, there even if it's going to be separate, there needs to be a classification for the gig industry. Like, I mean, dude, clearly, here's the deal. We're not, there's no more running. Since these companies have started going public, there's no more running anymore. Like, now regulations come. Now things start happening. And we've said for the last year, we don't want regulations. Nobody wants regulations. But at this point, I got to say, I'm starting to feel like some regulations are needed. Obviously, I'm pretty vocal. Ron knows that. Ron's pretty vocal. So we'll get our voices heard and stuff. But, like, I do think that something's needed. I think that by saying that, we need to be very careful, because once you are the people who don't want regulations start opening up to regulation, it can go real far, real fast. But
you
also,
a comment up there about, does Grubhub get taken to the shed in 23?
Yeah, because we were talking about question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. By the way,
I think when I was on here at the end of the year last year, and I was making I was commenting that I thought if any company did go to the employee model, it might be Grubhub. That I thought either, they're going to be, they're either going to switch to an employee model, or they'll get spun off. And Just Eat, the European company that owns them now, has said they're up for sale, but they haven't been spun off yet. And that's going to be interesting to see what happens to them. Is some other company going to buy them from Grubhub, or do they just continue their decline? Because they've been going downhill for a good 3 years straight.
Yeah. So, Roy, laughing out loud, your W-2 model is hired and fired on their terms. You follow their rules. You paid through them or not. They dictate what jobs you get. First of all, I actually can debate every part of this. That's not true, because W-2, they're not paying W-2 taxes. Hired or fired, they can't hire or fire me. They can deactivate me. But there's no, and then there's, and the burden would be on me. There's no process for me to go out and get unemployment. Let's take the pandemic out of it. But as a gig worker, there would be no process for that. You're paid through them. Yeah, that could be technically argued on every SaaS platform, software as a service platforms. They all pay that way. Or if not, they dictate the jobs that you get. Again, unless you're going for Top Dasher, which I'm telling you, I think breaks the independent contractor rule alone. But unless you're going for Top Dasher, they don't dictate anything. You can pick 1%, whatever.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things I want to kind of point out on that. First of all, compare that to, let's say you're an accountant. Okay, you're an accountant and you do the accounting for 2 or 3 companies. They can hire or fire you, right? They can, I mean, they can agree to use you as their accountant, or they can move on to somebody else. So that's no different. You're paid through them. Yeah, they pay you. That's no different. So none of those things determine whether or not you're an employee. Um, the one part that would determine if you're an employee is if they do dictate what you do. And if you've got the mindset that they dictate you, then yeah, you're the employee, my friend. You're the one
Yep.
that's being dictated here. I'm not dictated anything by DoorDash.
Like,
And
and so like let's point out the hourly even while you're right there. The
yeah,
hourly, if it took away the fact that so Roy, if you're still here, so Roy, if they took out that one that you're allowed to decline 1 per hour, because we all know that, I mean, how many does Mr. Flex or Nova see? I think they told me approximately 2 to 250 offers a day. They only take about what 13 to 17 of them. That's horrible statistics. So I mean, if you're only allowed to decline one, that doesn't even do anything. That's not even a perk they're giving you. It's literally just so it isn't W-2. That one little move makes it not W-2, but they take that away. They just made you an employee. Because if they say you get no declines and you have to take 100% for the hourly pay, you are now defined by every state even. I can't think of a state that wouldn't even back the federal government on that one.
you can choose, what you're doing. And really, those offers that they send on your phone, it's like a bid for your services. Here's a delivery. We're going to give you $13 to do this delivery. Will you accept it? Yes or no? And honestly, I mean, I multi-app, so I turn on several apps. And so DoorDash sends me an offer and I say no. I turn down that bid. Uber Eats pops up with another offer. No, I don't want that. DoorDash comes back with another one. It's like, oh yeah, that's the one I want to take. It's worth it to me. I'll accept that. And so and ultimately you're doing some negotiating by doing that. You can't set your rates, but I'll tell you a lot of businesses where you can't set your rates. And
Yeah, I was gonna
so,
say, like, that argument is still being held up by a lot of people, and I that one's always been a little odd to me because it's like, I do independent contractor work for laser. I don't ever set my price.
guys,
They
think about you.
basically say, "Hey, Steve, are you available these dates?" And then
Right.
they email me over, "Hey, this is the day pay. It's out of country, so it's $500 a day. You get here's your international per diem of $75 a day. You'll be gone for 10 days. These 10 dates. Here's your air travel. Here's the hotel you'll be at, and all the details. But that's it. You want that or not?" Which
Think
is what
about
I
a
call full
YouTube.
transparency.
Guys that make money on YouTube. You can't
Yeah.
negotiate your rates with YouTube. It's like take it
Yep.
or leave it. Do you want
Yep.
to do advertising on here? Yes or no? My website, I do advertising, and I don't, I don't, I don't negotiate my rates at all. If they're not paying me enough, I can use a different company to handle my ads for me. But I'm not setting
Yeah.
any rates or anything like that. I make some money off of affiliate programs where if people buy a product or something off of one of my links, I can get a commission. Once again, I don't have any control over the rate. I don't, if
I was
Burger's
gonna say
making
too, I thought it
$2,
was funny when you were telling me about the website and, the company that you primarily work with for the website that does some advertising. So, and
yeah,
I thought you had it flipped at first because you're like, I would be their employee, and I'm like, "Wait, what? It's your business, and you're
but that's just it.
you're
That's
working with them till the next best thing comes along."
sure. And so
I
it's
mean,
there are a lot of businesses that way. If you sell products on a commission, it's take it or leave it. It is, if you're going to go out and you're going to sell this widget and you get $3 every time you sell it, and there's no negotiating that $3 for, and there's a lot of businesses that have that type of a model, and they can't determine the rate. They can determine whether or not they're going to try and sell it. They can dictate their activities around it, but they can't set the rate. But that doesn't mean that they're not operating a business. And so that's why that argument about setting your rate is a fallacy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's It's a fact. It is a factor, but there are so many other factors that there's not one thing or two things that say, yeah, you're absolutely an employee because of this one or two things and stuff. It's
I
because
mean,
no,
also
nobody
they,
uses.
or independent contractor rules, we can use any tools at our disposal too. So I know there becomes a line with some things, but like there is, you can kind of set your rate through the Middleton tech apps and through Para.
Sure.
You can set, hey, I'll take these. Here's
Yep.
my, and here's my parameters. Here's my, so you actually can, by a third party app, be setting everything.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to
I
that building. I don't want to.
I don't even use an app. I just
Right. I mean,
I've
all
got
of us, like,
I got a
you know,
it's a 50
we
cent
get
rule.
it after a bit.
Right. If this order is going to pay me 50 cents a minute or more, I'll take it. And it's
Yeah.
real easy. If it's a $13 order, I got to be able to get it done in 26 minutes or less to make it worth that. That's my rate
Yeah.
and which is $30 an hour. And if it's going to pay me better than that, I'll take it. And if it's not, I'll pass. And so, yeah, I've set a rate, but I didn't negotiate the delivery fee or anything like that. No, but
Right.
um, because I know mostly what an offer is going to pay, it might be a little bit more, but usually isn't. And if it is, it's like 50 cents more because it's DoorDash manipulating. But you know, it really comes down to how you look at it. It really comes down to your attitude. It's like if you think you're an employee, then you're an employee, and that's really about it. And
And I got
but
and
if
I gotta
you feel like
say
you've
that
got control, that's a different matter.
this is a point that you and I hit on a little bit today, which is that most almost, I mean, like you guys, even in the chat, I don't know how many are in here, but somehow notate if you ever did true independent contractor work before the gig economy, or if you came straight from a W-2 to this. So I guess put W-2 in a comment or something if you came right from a W-2 to this, because it's not a bad thing, but I truly, it's not like any of these apps show you what that means. It's not like anybody's like making sure that you know what that means.
Mhm.
You're just going from W-2 to this. So like, why do you like we were talking about, why do you think they put the acceptance rate in there? Like there were some years, Ron probably remembers this, like 2015, where if you went, they were Uber and Lyft, rideshare was paying so good that you didn't question things. But if you went under an 80% uh acceptance rate, you were deactivated that day with you couldn't come back at them. So there was an actual, if you go below, there was a time it actually mattered, but like now it's simply put in there as a test, or as a for the newbies and for people who maybe are going for top dasher, but primarily for the churn rate of newbies coming onto the platform and saying, wait, this must matter. Because I mean, these
Yeah.
are the same people, all of us. I'm not picking on anybody. I do it too. Luckily, Gary reads it for us, but I don't read the terms of service sometimes. You know, Gary luckily breaks it down for us. But like we all have been in that stage where it's morning, we're ready to start working. We go to work and it's got a TOS update. Are you telling me that you sit there and read it before you click agree and let you want to get on the platform? No. I mean, and they know how to strategically plan these times to be like 3 a.m. on a Friday or a Saturday when it's going to be busy. And they just know. They already know nobody reads it anyway, almost, but now they know nobody's reading it. Because what can you click? Send me a copy, but then you still have to click, okay, I agree to get on the app. So it's okay, send me a copy of whatever I just agreed to.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I
In fact,
the
they've changed their
transparency
terms of
level,
service. You don't even have to agree to them anymore. At
yeah.
least DoorDash did. You don't even have to agree to if they make a change. All you have to do is turn on the app, and that is by nature agreeing to it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and so I think that, I was trying to real quickly, Ron, put down some notes from the minute I got home, like while I was getting ready. It was so short, but I remembered the Instacart thing we were talking about. I wanted to mention this again. So Instacart went from $48 billion valuation in March of 2021 to a $24 billion valuation in March of 2022 this year. And right now, they are at 13 billion. I thought it was 16 earlier, but it's 13 billion. When I was doing the math, I didn't have time to fully do it, but so in my head, it's over. They're hemorrhaging $2 billion of their value per month. So at this rate, they've tried to in December 2021 they said they'd IPO in 2022. In 2022 they actually set a date that was end of summer. It was like August something, and they missed that. And then just now they said by December 2023 we will IPO. Well, at this rate of losing 2 billion a month, even if you give them a little bit of clout, they're only around for 6.5 more months.
Mm-hmm.
Before they're bankrupt.
DoorDash was $245 just last November. A year later, they're $53.
Yep.
And
Lyft's on the NASDAQ at some ridiculously low price. They're like $11, $12. Mm-hmm. And they launched what? They launched in I believe in 2019. Uber and Lyft went public. Uber on the Dow, Lyft on the NASDAQ. And Lyft IPO'd at $78 and was under 40 when that day's closed trading in 6 hours. So I guess my thing is, and we talked about this a little bit, when these on-demand gig platform apps go public, and do you have assets? No. Do you have employees? No. Do you have vehicles? No. Do you have buildings? No. Like I don't think that the market knows how to deal with this. So I feel like Instacart's sitting on the sideline going, look what happened to all these companies that IPO'd. But at the same time, they're just getting docked to the point they have no value. So is that part of all of this big picture too, that these companies were never worth any? We all knew that there weren't going to be flying cars, or most of us did. Right. We wouldn't be just that everybody'd be cool with us just taking off and flying around and everything, and it's all good. And we all knew that autonomous, and in fact, I've been doing things on autonomous, but I got something I'll be sharing tomorrow night on the roundtable. It's a video piece from CBS San Francisco, where the two reporters, and I say that because it's mainstream. Usually mainstream works with Waymo and a lot of these crews, a lot of these autonomous companies in San Francisco, to the point they'll say some truths, but they don't dog them. And they straight up said that, they talk about what I've said. The deadline's been pushed so many times. Let's be honest. There's not a chance in the next 2 to 3 decades of seeing true autonomous can drive, pick you up, take you where you're going. They threw every company under the bus, and they were talking about all the issues too that these cars are having. So, these companies were making up departments in my mind. Hey, this is autonomous. Hey, this is our flying cars, and making it seem very valuable. And before they went public, it was all these, and I've been out there. I get this, the Silicon Valley game that moves through the Bay Area. No, we lost Ron for a minute. He'll be back. But the Silicon Valley area, it's all these companies just all are willing to throw money into each other if there's any sense to be made of it. Even though, and I wish Ron was here to hear this, because he was the one that said it, was that, everybody's following the same formula right now. So it's nothing's new, it's literally everybody, anything that comes out isn't like a new algorithm and isn't going to be a game changer. And it's not going to be like, oh, this is the giant disruptor that's come in to like fix everything. In fact, even the little companies that are starting up are modeling on these horrible algorithm patterns that abuse people, that don't pay them right, that don't leave you in a place to make any money. And it's, I don't know. I feel like Ron, I was hitting on the fact of we were talking about how there needs to be a disruptor, but there isn't one. Like, right. There needs to be somebody who comes in and doesn't follow all these crazy ideas.
Yeah. Because right now, yeah, Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub are all the same company, pretty much. The same, pretty much the same pay model, pretty much the same everything about the way they do things. The
Games,
same location,
non-transparency.
restaurant,
It's
all
like
that
they're
stuff.
following a playbook of evil things.
Yeah, and none of them are making it.
No.
I did this. I wrote this thing at the end of 2019, so right about this time 3 years ago, that said my website might not be around too much longer because it's about delivery, and I'm not sure delivery is going to be around because it's a business model that doesn't work. And at that time, I think DoorDash was on the brink because it was a question whether they could continue to get funding while they're losing money hand over fist, and none of them were doing well at all. And it was kind of like, at what point do they start going under because it's such a bad business model? And
Sure.
I think the only reason they're still around, that there's even a discussion, is because the pandemic, when everything shut down and people needed delivery, and all of a
Oh
sudden they
yeah.
blew up as far as customers, but they never figured out how to be profitable.
I mean, I mean,
And I
honestly,
think we're
like
getting back to
you and
where
I
it
have
was
talked
in
about this.
2019.
Grubhub was the only one even, and I said doing good before the pandemic. You changed that to doing okay,
Yeah.
which is probably a better read. You're right. It was doing okay, but the others were failures, complete
Mhm.
failures. And then the pandemic hit, and even rideshare had its troubles. But in one day, rideshare went bottom up, and in that very same day, delivery blew up like nobody's business, and so did Instacart.
Right.
People hadn't stepped into the Instacart space yet, like DoorDash does or Spark does, or all those. Like nobody had. It was just Instacart in that grocery space, and they weren't really doing that well.
Yeah.
They're doing okay,
Yeah.
but
And
and
here we
it
are.
flipped, but everything blew up. And it's like if I would think that at this point people understand that the food height, yeah, there's still a lot of people who love getting it and stuff, but it will come down and down and down a little bit at least in every market.
Yeah, I think we're
Especially
getting
during
back
times
to where we were before the pandemic.
when the dollar's tight and things like that, like we're in now, it's
Yeah.
you're gonna feel it. So, you know, is I guess is so I'm an easy answer on this. So maybe Ron can answer. I know his answer, but why is it not from your and my standpoint anyway? Because some people might truly believe this, and I hope that those that do really have done their research on this, because I have. I know Ron has. I am not a fan of unions. I am not a fan of a W 2, not just in general. I've had W-2s. I've had great ones that I liked. The laser company I contract with now, the first 2.5 years I worked for them, I was a W-2, but I was actually, I was a salary position. So I learned what abuse is. Because you guys, that's another thing. You guys think that like we're abused in the gig economy? Try a salary job
Yeah.
where where I know there's probably better limits these days than when I was doing that, but like nonetheless, not really, because production work is production work.
Wait
So
until
maybe I'd have a
DoorDash has the right
40-hour
to
week,
tell you
but
what
then
you
they'd
can do.
send me on the road for 80 hours, 90 hours a week for 4 weeks. So
Mhm.
you have a job, you get paid money for it, but forget about your life and your hours. That's gone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we're all moving to a flexibility thing, but okay, let's do this, because I told Ron we're gonna keep it to right around an hour here, and we could go on for so long. So let's do this. Ron, give us the best breakdown that you got on maybe what what you think might come about in 2023. What's a good play for 2023? Anything like of that nature? Advice, um, just based on what the trends that you and I talk about and that we see,
Right.
what do you think is a gig worker's best move right now?
Keep your options open and have an exit plan, because Well, there are really two big things that we've talked about now that are both things that should be of concern for people. One is, the state and federal governments trying to force an employee model. And if anything happens, it's going to take a couple of years. But what do you
But
do?
remember, guys, that doesn't just touch the gig economy too. We're talking about the
Right,
59 million. So
right.
writers,
But anything
freelancers,
that happens,
self-employed.
especially within the gig economy, if they change the laws, it's going to take a couple of years for it to actually put a stop to things, just because the amount of time it takes to do all the appeals and fight it and go through all those things. So it's not like something's going to happen right away. But I guess the question you've got to ask yourself is, if DoorDash went away tomorrow, what would you do? How would you replace that income?
Yep.
And there's a possibility that it might not happen tomorrow. But the other question is, because they're not profitable, what happens if it reaches a breaking point for these businesses that they say, we can't keep doing this, we have to do something completely different? What do you do if one day you find out that they've totally changed things up? And so you got to ask yourself, what would I do if that money goes away? And if you don't know, I think 2023 is a good year to start finding out other ways to do something. And I think the more you rely,
or even more make it yours
yeah,
if you can figure
yeah,
that out. Because if you've gotten really good at this gig stuff, there are ways to make it yours.
yep, absolutely.
It's
The
hard. It's
more
a
you
hard road.
rely, the more you rely on one company, I think the harder it's going to be. If you're doing only DoorDash, I think you're going to struggle more in 2023 than in 2022, because
I fully
I think they're
agree.
slowing down, and I think they'll continue to. And so keep your options open and look for other opportunities and figure out how to mix more of these things together. And that's the first one. And the second one is, I mean, if you love the heck out of doing delivery work or rideshare or anything like that, ask yourself, why do you like it so much? And for most of us, it's the freedom, it's the flexibility. Start asking yourself that question now, which is, how else can you do something with that? What are the other opportunities? How can you take that experience that you've got running a business and being free to do it, and turn that into something else? And let 2023 be the year that you start figuring out what to do next. um, Gig work is always going to have a ceiling. It's always going to be, you can make some good money.
In each market too. But
Yeah, and,
the
and the
ceiling
ceiling
usually
differs from
correlates
market
with the
to
cost
market.
of living. So really it comes out to be the
I would
same.
say on the average, it usually peaks out at $25 to $30 an hour. Um, if you're really, really good, you might be able to, squeeze out an extra $5. There are some markets where it's higher than that, but there's, it's only ever going to be so much. It's not like next year you're going to be doing 50% better. And so I think I think all
If
of
you
this
continue
great
along the same line of
experience.
just going with these apps.
Right,
It's
right.
clearly all of us could be doing that much better. So
Sure.
yeah.
And but I think that there's tremendous experience in making your own decisions and being your own boss, but you got a much higher ceiling in so many other things. That's why I've got a website now, and
Yeah.
why a lot of guys have moved on to YouTube and other content things, and other people moved into other businesses altogether. Um, it's like, to me, gig work, rideshare delivery is like the gateway drug to really blowing up as an entrepreneur. You've got
Yeah.
elements, you've got elements of it, but it can be a great training ground, and it can be a great step to the next thing. So I think that's the big thing for 2023 is be ready to say goodbye to delivery. It may still be around. It will be in some way, shape, or form. It's too essential a part of the thing. But I think what I would tell you is, you can you can do, if you were one of those that's able to do really well at gig work, it's usually a sign that you can do really well at a lot of other things and probably a lot better at other things because you've got the initiative. And
Yeah.
so maybe this is the opportunity to start thinking about, where is that? What is that next step? What are those things that you could do? And start looking for those things. And the beautiful thing about doing delivery is, um, you've got a whole lot of time to learn. Not as much freedom sometimes with rideshare because you got passengers in the car listening, but what I'm talking about is audiobooks and podcasts and things like that. And you start finding an interest in anything, and all of a sudden just saturate your mind with all that stuff and figure out, and I did that with, how to do podcasts and how to do websites and how to, figure out the search engines, how to figure out how to be good on Google and stuff like that. And so all that time I'm out delivering, I'm getting paid to learn how to build my business. And I think that's the
Yep.
kind of thing, I've been preaching that since I first started my podcast. But
Yeah.
have an exit plan, and if you don't know what your next step is, make that your next step, is to figure out what it is.
Even and yeah, I would like to continue that a little, even if it's a temporary exit plan. Because maybe you're like, I don't know, but I feel like I'm coming up on a crossroads. Like, okay, that's fine. Like people go to work at restaurants and stuff for a while too till they figure it out. So, but have something, I guess, is how I would tweak it out. Have something outside of this prepared in your head. Could I do that if I had to? Again, you can put it into a if I had to situation because that's kind of
Sure.
what we're doing. But I do think there's still, I think it depends on your market. I really do believe that. Look at me, like I do curry in this market. I've gotten other people on curry. I've suggested to people in some markets, people don't get the offers I get. In this market, I can't earn. I have never seen Instacart orders like I have in some other cities, not even one. So it really is market to market what you can do. But I'm going to continue on with what you said too. Is my final thoughts is uh, diversify, diversify like you never have before. In 2021, going into near the end of what was it? 2021, middle of 2021, multi-apping was really starting to get bigger, and the pandemic was still going on, and then the money died down, so more and more people started multi-apping. Um, and then people got into patterns in 2022, I think, and I was saying this way to Ron, like I know some people have 3, 4, 10, 12 apps running, but here's what I say. Let's say you have 5 running. Let's say that numbers 1 and 2 are the ones that you do 90% of your work on. Number 3, you do 10% of your work on, and numbers 4 and 5, you don't even remember the last time you worked them. Here's my advice. Don't delete that app. Go on that app and work. Even, I mean, try and find the best one you can clearly, but obviously if you've been turning it on to multi-app, it's not providing you anything that compares with the others. But I would say I've seen a lot of deactivations that are uncaused, and sometimes they're done simply from just on some apps, simply just from not using them. So get a delivery in on your other apps. And at the same time, put more apps on your phone. Get them all going now because at a point they might start doing more waiting lists like Curry does or things like that, or they might start, it might not be as quick and easy if they force people, if they force these companies to not use Checker for a $250 cheap background check, but tell Uber and all these companies that now they have to pay a real company, not Checker background. But when we were looking through the para ones, there are background check companies that are considered very good in this country that cost 10 times as much as a background check from Checker. So there's a reason why Uber and Lyft go with the cheapest background check there is, because it's the cheapest and they churn so many people through the system.
Mhm.
So, you could get deactivated for that. So I would just say put every app on your phone, become familiar with it. I guess only put it on your phone if it's an app you would honestly do in some situation if you had to. Like if you hate grocery shopping, you can't, it's not my favorite thing, but I'm building a little dumpling thing. But if you hate it, you can't stand it, probably don't put all the grocery apps on your phone. It's not a good idea. I mean, that's not your exit plan or
That's
even
that's
part
why
of
I've
your
never gotten
pivot.
into Instacart.
Yeah, I mean, I got burned on one last night. I won't get into it because I see John McCallion, a good friend of mine from California, in here, and he knows if I start talking about Instacart, he'll use it against me. But I actually took one last night, thought it wasn't bad, and it was bad. But it was the best, like on in a picture, it was the best thing I'd ever seen in a year on Instacart. I was like, whoa! It was near me, but the item count was high. The store was a zoo. It was like last night at like 5:30 with the holidays coming up, and I don't know about. I think everywhere in the country is going to be feeling this, but Ron and I we're actually preparing for a -1 high tomorrow and a -7 low with a -50 mile per hour wind chill. Not the normal Colorado weather. Ron was saying he was biking the other day.
Right.
uh, and that's kind of what Colorado is. It's like, don't think that we're even near that -1. We're actually doing like what I would call like something to be concerned about, the temperature dropping that much that quick. That's like,
Well,
what's going on
you
here
can
for a
go
day?
ahead and think that it's bad here in Colorado because it's getting a little crowded. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't want to get too many people moving in.
Yeah. No. Yeah. 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 Yeah, we're full. Just, Wyoming, guys, needs population big
Oh
time. And
yeah,
it's a beautiful state. You can still get into it cheap. Has Jackson Hole, has the whole Jackson area. It has Yellowstone. It has, oh man, Wyoming's awesome. But there's more. I can't, was it deer? Somebody had a weird stat. There's more deer than people in Wyoming.
that's funny.
And I guess it's true. There's Laramie, there's Casper, there's Omaha, there's Jackson, but there's even all the other towns you're going to see really are like two, 200 to 300 people. So it is beautiful country though. But um,
Parts
hopefully,
of it.
guys, take this all. This is not the sky is falling run. Go get a W
No,
2 tomorrow, quick before the holidays are over. There's still money to be made in this, and it's not dying. The gig economy is going nowhere, and globally, it's going nowhere. Globally, it tripled in the past 2 years, and it's looking at going like 6 times as many people by 2025. And I was saying this to Ron. Some countries are moving to like union type models, like we don't want here, but like the administration's pushing. And then some countries aren't, but we're the free country of the world. How are we going to like explain that to people if we go to a union model in what is going to soon become the biggest industry people work on the planet? Which is the gig economy. I'll just say it that way. Look into all things too. Look into Rover. Look into renting your yard. Look into that's the thing that Hannibal and I talked about. Look into luggage delivery from the airport during the holidays. It can pay up to $500 a day. Look at Dumpling. I'm loving it so far, and I run everything. I price it. I'm in complete control. It's a little harder because I got to get my own clients. Look into Curry if you haven't already. It might be great in your area. You might be waitlisted. Look into new apps. Look into websites. Look into last mile services. I'm all about that, even if it's not Curry. I think Viho has a good model. I think Bungie's good. I think that Freight is good. But in my market, Curry's hands down the best. But last mile's big. Look into last mile medical courier. That pays huge. That pay is insane. So, I mean, like I tell you guys, Hannibal and I do the Beyond the Algorithm. I talk about it on my channel. He talks about it. We talk about it on there. Look into other things, you guys. Diversify. Don't just be in just the 3 giant delivery apps and say, well, I don't want to do rideshare, so I'll just stick with these 3 because that part of the game could change. And so it might be nice to have some other things. Like Ron said, he doesn't even want Instacart. Well, I hate Instacart. I hate it. I think it's one of the big, and here's one of the reasons why. And I don't think I've said this in a while, so I will say this before we sign off here. But um, one of the reasons I hate Instacart the most, you guys, is because they have a bot problem that is out of control. And I don't understand why they don't address it. Because here's the thing: you can go on to any social platform, and if you put the word Instacart, and I'm not even talking, Ron, you probably know this, I'm not even talking about hashtag. If you just write Instacart, like on Twitter, even, you know, you will have like in about 10 minutes people saying that they can get you reactivated or they can get you in this bot account. So it's like Instacart is aware that anytime their name is mentioned on any social platform, the bots approach them immediately. So why don't you just address it and get rid of these bots that no other platform has? To me, I've always thought, I always feel like the bots are part of Instacart. You know, like a behind the scenes sketchy thing. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But regardless, I mean to me it's so transparent how untransparent they are, because they're like, they know these bots are out there and they don't care. A lot of times the answer is they don't care, but this is a big one. It doesn't allow any other good orders, and they seem to be okay with people charging third-party service fees to get you bots and get you batches. So, but with that said, I'm sure we covered a decent amount of what we talked about. I know that we're probably missing some things, yeah, for sure. And thank you
Well, we can
guys
go
for
through ours
joining
pretty
us.
easy too.
Yeah. And thank you, Ron, for after doing coffee, doing this, because I think this is important that people just hear this. Again, it's not the sky is falling. It's just get
Yeah.
get aware, get on it, get activated on some new apps. You know, have more of an arsenal. I guess that's the way to put it. Make your arsenal as big as you can. Challenge before the new year. So
Yeah, I think that's
with
the thing. Is don't be static. You know, don't get
yeah.
stuck with one or two things. Be ready to move on, because the gig economy is going to change some way or another. We don't know exactly how, but it will change, and you just
Oh
want
yeah.
to be ready to adapt and adjust to those changes, rather than getting caught flat-footed.
So I got to say this before we go, you guys. If you haven't checked out Ron's channel, he actually has a YouTube channel, but I know he way more promotes the website. It's entrecourier.com. You can find it in the show notes. He writes great articles, like seriously, really great. You guys I know you in here would love the way that they roll. He also has a great podcast, and so do I. Like, see, all you guys on YouTube need to check out the audio world a little bit, because Ron and I got some great audio podcasts going on for a long time, and a lot of good stuff to go through. And yeah, I guess with that said, Ron, it's been a pleasure. I feel like I got to see you a lot today, and happy holidays, safe travels, and we'll do something after the new year, right?
That sounds good. That sounds good. Have a great Christmas,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody.